We talk about coaches a lot, and coaches often in leadership positions, but it's a very intentional choice of words at Canva, because talking about coaching and framing leadership in that way and management responsibilities in that way means that the focus is on the growth and development of your coachees, and through their personal growth and career growth, it creates business impact, and it becomes this virtuous cycle. So by helping people to grow, that helps the business to grow, and so on and so forth. And it's not just about managing of resources in order to get a thing done. It's about helping people to aspire to and achieve great things and develop and grow personally and professionally. And we have a whole growth and development framework based around 4 pillars and 12 skills that is used as a toolkit for coaches and coachees to hone in on different areas of opportunity and strengths that coachees want to develop in. And as a coach, you kind of help them with that and figure out what are those opportunities in the landscape of the business and the landscape of the product. What are the opportunities that you can kind of connect your coachees with to grow and have impact.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Growth Mates, the place where we bring inspiring leaders from growth, product and design to share their experiences with you. In this episode, we had the chat with someone that lives in the Down Under, Australia. Being the growth design lead at Canva, Iain Dowling shared with us how they create a magical PLG culture that keeps delivering value. Among the many topics we touch on our conversation, I'd like to emphasize that Canva is doing an excellent job in creating a wonderful and honest culture where each individual feels empowered and has a clear mission to accomplish. And I can say that if Canva has become one of the Australian unicorns, it has to be for a reason. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello, Iain. Welcome to Growth Mates. How are you doing today?
Hey, Kate. Hey, Oscar. Really awesome to be here. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
How is the summer kicking in Australia?
It's not quite officially summer, but the weather is sure pushing that way. We've had a few hot days recently, so it's shaping up to be a typical Australian hot summer.
I feel a bit jealous that you will have summertime, but nevertheless, I'm happy to see you today. And I remember when we first met with Iain, I was so impressed that you spent almost 5 or 6 years at Canva and became a design lead for growth. And it's very interesting to hear more about your journey. And I remember even on our 20 minutes conversation, we covered a lot of wonderful stuff about your culture. This is why it would be great to dedicate this episode to both your career path and culture at Canva and Canva path towards where it is today. So maybe let's start with something as an introduction. If you could tell us who is Iain Dowling today and what led you to become a growth design leader at Canva?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a designer based in Sydney in Australia, and I started out making mobile games and apps pre-iPhone, for better or for worse, and earned my stripes on a bunch of startups that didn't really work out so well, but I learned a whole lot, and then transitioned into consulting to big brands. And then after a sabbatical, I got a call from a recruiter from Canva. And here we are nearly 6 years later, and I'm still working at Canva and still having an amazing time. I've learned a huge amount in that time, and I'm very proud of the culture that we've built at Canva and maintained today. And I'm very excited to have the opportunity to speak to you about it more today.
You mentioned 6 years at Canva. So I don't know when Canva was born, but you must be one of the pioneers there. I would like to ask you, what's the most significant change in the org that you've seen during these 6 years in there?
I think we had our 10th birthday not that long ago, a couple of months ago. Our 10th birthday
Congrats.
celebration. Thank you. We had a really big party. So I've been around for not quite 6 of those 10 years. So it was a little bit of a story before I joined. But when I did join, I think I was product designer number 6. And fast forward to today, we have over 170 product designers, which we include content designers, design researchers, digital designers, product design ops and creative technologists in that product design practice bucket. And in that 6 years, I've seen obviously a lot of change, but it's kind of funny. The company still has maintained its kind of core values and its culture. The vibe is still there, even though the company has grown so much. So, the biggest way that it has changed really is just in the number of people. And now, when I started, I used to be able to know every single person in the company. When I'd arrive for breakfast as a newbie, everybody would walk up and sort of say hello, and everybody kind of knew everyone because it was about 160 people in the Sydney office, and now thousands of people in the organization. So you kind of can't know everyone. So that's changed, but the essence of what Canva was when I joined is still there. And I'd say the biggest change that I've kind of faced in that time is that switch from IC build track designer to become a manager or a coach, as we like to say in Canva. And that's been my biggest growth story, and lots of challenges along the way that I can talk about.
How was this change from IC to manager? How did it come? Is it something you were looking forward to, or is it something that just happened naturally? How was it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely wasn't something that I was planning on. When I started, it was a case of I was kind of a hired gun in the consulting world, and then joined Canva with other similar sort of craft-minded folks, just kind of working on whatever we could work on. And I was fortunate enough to kind of get to work on many different parts of the product. And so my fingerprints are in a few different places. And if you'd asked me at that point if I would be kind of coaching or managing in future, I would have probably laughed. But as the company scaled, those coaching opportunities opened up, and I decided to take a bit of a leap of faith and take on board those opportunities, recognize doors opening, and decide to walk through them. I was quite surprised and delighted to discover that I really am motivated by seeing other people's success and kind of having impact through others and encouraging other people to grow and other people to succeed and do amazing things. And that motivation was a surprise and is something that I cherish a lot and continues to motivate me to this day.
You mentioned the word coaching. It's something I have never heard in terms of, so you were preferring a managerial role and you said I became a coach or something like that. Why is that? Like, why do you call it coach? I mean, I understand the coaching part of a leader, but I've never heard it before in kind of a role. Do you call like leaders coaches in Canva?
That's right. Well, we talk about coaches a lot, and coaches often in leadership positions, but it's a very intentional choice of words at Canva, because talking about coaching and framing leadership in that way and management responsibilities in that way means that the focus is on the growth and development of your coachees, and through their personal growth and career growth, it creates business impact, and it becomes this virtuous cycle. So by helping people to grow, that helps the business to grow, and so on and so forth. And it's not just about managing of resources in order to get a thing done. It's about helping people to aspire to and achieve great things and develop and grow personally and professionally. And we have a whole growth and development framework based around 4 pillars and 12 skills that is used as a toolkit for coaches and coachees to hone in on different areas of opportunity and strengths that coachees want to develop in. And as a coach, you kind of help them with that and figure out what are those opportunities in the landscape of the business, in the landscape of the product. What are the opportunities that you can kind of connect your coachees with to grow and have impact?
Can you tell a bit more about these 4 pillars and this framework? Because I think it would be such a great asset for any company that is introducing this framework. And I'm very impressed by the structure and the actual cultural aspect of that, like introducing the coaching as a name, as the just intention. Because for me personally, when I was exploring the transition to management, the word manage was a little bit demotivating for me, to be honest, because I didn't want to just manage people. It's a bit of, counterintuitive, but this was something for me that was a bit of a blocker. I really love to be a creative person, a designer, and didn't want to be a manager in that sense. So Iain, if you could tell a bit more about this framework, that would be super useful.
Yeah, sure thing. I can even maybe link to a resource later that goes into a greater level of detail than we have time for today. But the 4 pillars that we have, craft, strategy, communications, and leadership and coaching. And within each of those 4 pillars, that's broken down into a further 3 skills, and it provides that extra level of granularity. And what we strive for is for people to be encouraged to grow across the whole spread of skills and pillars. And this enables people to kind of become well-rounded, I guess, and also inspires people to grow in ways that they might not have thought about. I think it's very easy perhaps to fall into a craft mindset, or to assume that strategy is just for leads, or to miss the value of concentrating on communication as something to be improved. And with leadership and coaching, understanding kind of the nuances of personal leadership, not just leadership of other people.
Is any of you received training in order to be like better coaches instead of like leader or managers? So we're talking about coaching people. This is something you probably will need to learn. There are a lot of soft skills involved in there. Do you get any training for that, or is something you learn on the way? How does it work?
Yeah, that's actually to your earlier question about what has changed at Canva over the nearly 6 years I've been there. A lot of it has been the maturing and the improving of our systems and processes. And one really great example of that is our Canva U, or Canva University, which is this constantly evolving and growing resource of subject matter experts and support folks that help create content and cadences and rituals and opportunities for people to learn on different topics. And obviously, coaching is one of the main areas where people are provided with those resources and training to step up and improve on their coaching journey. And we have ongoing things like in the product design space, we have product design coaches, Slack channel, and support group, and regular meetings where people can come and compare notes and compare their challenges and talk about what types of challenges they've come up against with their coachees and how they're helping them, and share tips and that kind of thing. So there's lots of, definitely not left to figure that out by yourself. There's definitely a lot of great resources and folks around to help support coaches to grow themselves.
Do you think, because if I'm not mistaken, Canva was founded by designers, right? So the founders, or 2 of them, are designers.
Two of the 3, have a background in design.
Okay, so 2 of the 3 are designers. Do you think that this kind of shift in culture, where we call managers, coaches, and this way of seeing organization in a more horizontal place, has to do with the fact that the founders are designers?
It's an interesting question. I think the fact that 2 of the 3 founders have a background in design has definitely had a major influence over the culture, and continues to have a major influence over the culture of the company. And that permeates kind of everything. And it definitely would influence how we've framed and designed coaching. When I joined the company, one of the first things that was kind of launched or announced was our values, our company values. And that kind of distilled the thinking of the founders and other leads, and things like being a good human, being a force for good, empowering others. Empowering others is my favorite of our company values. And we take them quite seriously, and they permeate everything that we do. And I think that concept of empowering others is represented in our coaching framework and the way that we've approached management through that lens of coaching. Yeah.
I'm going to switch a bit the topic, and I would like to know, when did Canva took off? Because, Canva is a tool I barely had heard about, and suddenly I realized that some of my friends are actually using it. And yeah, I would like to know if you know because you've been there for 6 years. When was the time when it took off, and why, or what happened in there?
That's an interesting one. I guess took off, it kind of depends on what your metric is. For me, in Australia, it kind of took off around the time that I joined, because it was announced around the time that I joined that Canva was the latest tech unicorn that reached $1 billion in valuation. And so that's kind of a mark of taking off. And that's when I think it became a really well-known brand, at least in Australia, and maybe started to become so in the US. And then the next kind of moment that I reflect on is when we launched our Canva Pro subscription product. And that was kind of representative of a moment in time where the growth team kind of became really relevant, and we started becoming very intentional about our focus on various growth metrics. And I like to think that our team had some positive influence on Canva taking off and starting to hit a lot of targets around MAUs and revenue and so on, and start to become more of a global product. And that's probably another way to look at it, is from a very, very early stage, even before I joined, it was very important from the founders that Canva be built as an international product. Our whole mission is empowering the world to design, and so you can't empower everyone unless you're cross platform and available in every language in every country in the world. And so that internationalization or localization piece was very important from an early stage. And so I think that became a critical foundational piece that our growth kind of took off from there, because it was available everywhere.
That makes sense. And you mentioned that the growth team started when you were starting to think on Canva Pro. You were launching Canva Pro. Could you tell a bit about this process? When did you actually feel the need and you said, okay, we intentionally need a growth team here? And how did this happen, and how was kind of the process to establish the team and to embed it in the company?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate enough to be one of the founding members of the Canva Pro team, which at the time was called the Canva for Work team. Our first subscription product was called Canva for Work, and there was no singular team that was really concentrating on driving the growth of that product. So we created a team to drive increase in subscribers and really double down on our premium business model. And that was the start. And that kind of grew to become a few different teams. We had one team that was focused on growth of the subscription product, another team that was focused on the product's features for the subscription product, so our premium features, and a third one that was our payments and billing infrastructure to support that. And then those three, so one team sort of grew to become three teams, and then those three teams continued to grow and eventually became a group. And then you kind of fast forward to today, and we've got several groups across the growth supergroup, as it's called. So we have teams, groups, and then supergroups. And so growth is a supergroup today with several groups, 6 groups, and each of those groups has several teams. So it kind of grew organically like that, originally from an intent to grow our subscription product. But we eventually covered other metrics like increasing MAUs of our free product and increasing use of Canva collaboratively and amongst teams.
Okay, so if I understood right, basically when Canva Pro came out, you wanted to establish a growth team to raise kind of the metrics, because it's where Canva was making money at, right? Then it grew in groups and subgroups, and then you started to have teams for each part of the funnel, kind of, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Although with a slight twist, as we grew, we actually had separate groups. One for focused on MAUs for our free products, another one focused on revenue for our subscription product for solo users, and then another group that was focused on our relatively new at the time Canva for Teams team-based products and usage of Canva collaboratively and as a team. And so they're kind of groups organized around our product SKUs or user segments. And we very recently, in the last couple months, actually changed our organizational structure to be more aligned to the growth funnel, which is a more typical traditional way of organizing growth. So we actually just have made that change recently and are excited to see how that plays out.
Why did you make that change? Because for me, it's interesting to also analyze different growth structures in different companies. And your structure, when we talk to you, seemed to be quite authentic, because I have never heard like the team is structured that way based on segments or persona or key use cases in growth in particular. Because typically growth teams are structured just based on the funnel. Why did you make this pivot?
Originally, it kind of organically grew that way based on our intention to build up teams that were focused around particular metrics. And so we wanted to move the needle on MAUs, which is primarily our free product. And so a team and then a group grew up around that. Similarly, for revenue and for our paid product, and a group grew up around that. And then again, for our team product and our team subscription. And that sort of is the way that we organically grew. But then we've made an effort to change the way that we're doing things and to organize around the funnel, because we feel like we're at a stage where identifying users that sit, the adjacent user case of folks that are sitting between being activated and engaged and retained or monetized, is where we can have our next round of impact. And so we've organized and structured ourselves around that idea. Also, we are hoping that it turns out to be more efficient when we think about certain parts of the user journey, like onboarding. We had a challenge where there were folks in multiple groups thinking about the same thing for very similar challenges around onboarding. And so we hope that by centralizing that in the activation groups, then that will make things a little bit more efficient. And when we make growth gains in one particular segment, and that gets scaled across all the other segments more efficiently and quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's great that you made these huge changes along the way, even after the company is already quite mature, because sometimes like with scale, it's quite hard to make these huge organizational changes, but if it helps you be more efficient, why not? I just also wanted to let our listeners know that your onboarding flow is amazing. Your dashboard experience is amazing. And if anybody wants to check it and get some inspiration, I would totally recommend that. I did it myself several times.
Thank you.
Yeah, because your product is very horizontal and it's an art to organize so many use cases for so many segments in different markets in one product. And I think you're doing a good job here, like in terms of user experience as well. So yeah, recommendation for anybody who is looking for some inspiration to check out Canva.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. We've invested a lot of effort in it so far, and hopefully it gets even better. Stay tuned.
As a growth team, you mentioned that every group has kind of their own metric. Do you have any North Star vision for the growth team? So a metric that it's responsibility of all the teams at the same time, and that it's basically the sum of all the efforts that you guys put together?
We do, but it's quite simple, really. We just have MAU and ARR, so monthly active users and annualized recurring revenue are our two key metrics that everything kind of ladders up to. And so we kind of break that down on a per group and then a per team basis to figure out what their metrics are that they're going to contribute to that ladder up to those top level metrics. And then we, on a calendar year basis, we'll set what our target is. And as is one of our values at Canva, set crazy big goals and make them happen. We like to set big targets and then push really hard towards those.
Just for the audience to make sure they understand, you say MAU, multi-active users. What does this mean exactly? Users that are using the product every 2-3 days, or how it is?
So that's a good question. Yeah. So monthly active users can have various definitions, and it kind of comes down to what we count as being active. So we have certain behavioral triggers within the product that when a user performs those actions, then that counts as an activation event. And so the MAU count is the number of users, the number of unique users that are performing activation events in any one given monthly period.
I was very delighted by Canva when you guys introduced AI on the product. You call it Magic Studio, and it basically you add a prompt and Canva creates magic for you. Was growth involved into that feature, and how did you come up with it?
I think magic is Canva's way of representing the value that AI adds to the product and the customer experience. And it's very important to us, how do we empower people with the latest tools and the latest technology? And AI is obviously a really big part of that. And we see that as being a great kind of assistant and way of adding a lot of value and delight into the process of designing things. And this is an insight that sort of started a while back, and many teams across the organization have been working on figuring out what does magic and what does AI mean for Canva and for all the features that we're working on. And so it's been very much a cross-functional, cross-company effort to kind of conceive what magic is and to culminate in launching the Magic Studio recently. And Growth's role in that was similar to its role in pretty much any new feature release, which is just to maximize the engagement with the awareness of and the engagement with and the uptake of the new features that we release. So with the Magic Studio release, it was partnering with both marketing and core product folks to make sure we made a big splash with Magic Studio, and all the new features were up there in lights, both outside and inside the product. And we created these enticing flows that encourage people to try out the new features, and for those that were new premium features, to try them out and to hopefully upgrade for them and see a lot of value in those. And so Growth kind of had that same partnership with core products and marketing as it has for previous big feature releases.
This is a wonderful example, and I think it's a good split of responsibilities between core and growth team that I'd like to refer, because usually growth team can be very useful in helping users discover certain features and adopt them through different onboarding experiences that you can add to the core functionality. So this sounds like a good framework of partnership to refer to for anybody else who is questioning how growth and core teams should collaborate.
Yeah, it's collaboration is key. And I think that's something that with Magic Studio, it was just the latest in an example of collaboration opportunities across the company. And we're still trying to get that right at Canva. And it's cool to see how designers can take a leading role in that collaboration to really be the drivers of joining the dots between the teams and kind of reaching out and using our shared interest in creating the best user experience possible to join the dots between the growth teams and the product teams.
Yeah, this is absolutely wonderful. I think while listening to your conversation with Oscar, I collected different words and names of your values, your teams, your culture, and it feels like it's a great and very inspiring vocabulary. You call managers coaches, you name your teams in certain way, like super groups, which makes a bit more inspiring, I think, to work in such a team. And then I remember when we had like a small chat with you, you said that you have vibe team. And I was totally surprised because I have never heard such a name for people team or HR team or the team that is creating the culture. And I think like Canva is a product for creators. And what resonates to me is this creative and magical vibe that you are like spreading around everything, your product, your culture, your teams. And my assumption is that this creativity is in DNA of your teams. Maybe also it's connected to the fact that some of your founders have this design background. But I was very surprised to hear that you have your vibe team that is probably responsible for creating this vibe and scaling it with the company scale. Can you tell a bit more about your vibe team?
Yes, the vibe team is a critical team at Canva, and they're the champions of our culture. And we're very, very lucky to have them. And they're an amazing group of people. So the vibe team Well, to tell a bit of a story about how this plays out in practice, when I started working at Canva, it was very much an in-person, in-office culture where everybody was encouraged to come in all the time, and all the events and the socializing and things that surround the work were all in person. And we hired predominantly people that were located around our headquarters, Sydney, Manila. And when COVID happened, it kind of forced our company, along with many, many others, to rapidly shift, and shifting from in-person to remote, and then eventually to hybrid. And I was pleasantly surprised, but in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, that we so successfully made that transition from in-person to remote, in large part because of the lab team. And they made it their mission to ensure that all of the magic that made Canva such an amazing and fun place to work translated as best as we could to the remote environment, and then into working from home and that kind of thing, and then translated that into hybrid where we are now. So things like, just making work a fun experience, and maintaining an engaging culture, making sure that everybody's, feeling a sense of connection, looking out for their well-being, all these kinds of things, and helping arm the coaches and the leaders with the tools that are necessary to maintain that engagement in a hybrid and remote work environment. Yeah, it's the Vibe team. Shout out to the Vibies.
Wonderful. And you've mentioned several times different things and practices that you managed to keep along the way, and how this team was nurturing employees' well-being. Could you give a bit more examples, and maybe some of our listeners could copy-paste these practices and introduce them to their teams and cultures?
Yeah, sure thing. So to complement the Vibe team, we also have a well-being team that has lots of ongoing initiatives. There's the standard thing around the employee assistance program that's always there to ensure the health of our team. But on top of that, there's things like regular well-being talks that invite professionals, folks from industry and subject matter experts to give inspiring talks that help people to sort of take care of themselves and each other, their mental and physical health. Within the growth supergroup, we make sure to make make well-being like a really common topic of conversation. We always make sure that we're talking about it with each other, looking out for each other, and not making it something that is hidden. We want to encourage people to be taking time off when they need it and taking care of themselves. I think that's really important as part of the culture of openness.
To summarize this part about culture at Canva, what do you think are the main factors that led to high-performing growth work that consistently is delivering value? You've already mentioned well-being and making sure everybody is in a good shape and feels good. Maybe there is anything else that comes to your mind?
Main factors that lead to a high-performance growth organization really starts with your talent, and making sure that you're hiring great talent that are really aligned with your values and principles. So whatever your organization or your team's values are, just finding people that are a really great fit for that. We look for people that have a strong collaboration mindset. This idea that, you're not going to be doing everything yourself and are expected to execute on everything yourself. So coming on board with a collaborative mindset to work together to achieve great things. Something else I would say is a factor is having access to quality data insights, both qualitative and quantitative. So we're at Canva in the growth team is still building our research team. It's small but mighty, but we have a very, very strong data team, and that data team started in the growth team actually years ago at Canva. So we're very fortunate to have a really strong data team. And product teams often talk about triads, the triad being often is the case of design, product, and engineering. And within growth, we like to talk about the quad. And so we add a data person to that kind of core team, and data permeates everything that we do. And it's kind of a case of, you move what you measure. So when striving for high performance, measuring things and learning from those data insights is critical. And lastly, I would say we're always constantly thinking about planting seeds and picking fruit. So you're always harvesting and reaping the benefits of the seeds that you planted earlier, but you also need to be mindful to continue planting seeds that you can harvest in the future.
This is a great approach, and I would like to take a little bit of time to focus on the hiring aspect and recognizing talent for growth, because sometimes it's like quite a huge challenge for teams that are introducing new growth teams or hiring the first time for growth. And do you have any way or framework to recognize growth talent, maybe for design in particular, as your design manager? And what is that most important skill for growth person to have to be able to join such a team as Canva growth team?
At Canva, we apply the same approach to hiring of product designers, no matter which team they sit in the entire organization. So our framework essentially stays the same, no matter where they are, but we dig into the specific skills and experience of individuals and kind of guide them towards the right role fit wherever that may be in the organization. And as an example of what we look for when thinking about growth product design roles, we're really looking for people that have a data mindset or data curiosity. So we don't really require or screen for people that have got heaps of experience in A/B testing and multivariate testing. We are really more interested in finding people that have an interest in understanding the impact of the things that they're creating and shipping and learning from that. So rather than being caught up in the craft of just creating a thing, being interested in seeing how that impacts the community once it's launched, and then learning from that, and then being excited about thinking about where to next, how are we going to improve, and continuing on that path. So that data mindset is really important to us. And we're also about growth teams are often looking at flows and thinking about the user experience of whole flows and journeys rather than going super deep on a particular feature or interaction. So that's something that we look for in people that are suitable for growth roles as well.
Wow, I love it. And I also resonate a lot to the fact that you are not splitting or separating the assessment criteria or requirements for core or platform or growth teams, because I believe this impact-oriented mindset and data-informed mindset and iteration-driven mindset should be in place in all of these functions, to be honest.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. What is your favorite interview question when hiring for growth teams?
It's just challenging because every candidate is different, and I find myself asking slightly tailoring the questions to the individual, but a theme that I like to think about and probe into is along the lines of like, what if somebody's presenting something that they've worked on, like a case study, a project that they've released into the world, I like to probe into what was it that happened along the way that was unexpected and changed, influenced the final solution. And the thing I like about that is that it's open to interpretation as to whether that could be talking about stakeholder or business reasons, or could have been technology constraints, things that were discovered along the way that engineers gave feedback on, or it could be timeline constraints, it could be data insights, it could be feedback that you receive from the team, whatever. But what is interesting about that, or gets people to kind of think about, is beyond presenting this perfect design process, what actually went wrong, or what changed, and what was surprising, and how did they deal with that? So recognizing that things don't go perfectly, life is like that, work is like that, things happen. How did you respond to that, and did you grow from that? I think that's always super interesting to hear from candidates about how they respond to situations like that.
Yeah, 100%. And we talked to you about this way of recognizing growth talent outside your organization or hiring externally, but there is also the way to do that internally, especially in a big company like Canva. And with that, I was thinking that as a coach, I will call you coach right now, not a manager. As a coach, one of the most important rituals that you have with your team is actually having high quality one-on-ones. And I remember that you have a lot of different interesting methods to do that. I remember you mentioned once walk-in one-on-ones or something like that. Could you tell about one favorite format for one-on-one that you are using as a coach at Canva?
Yeah, sure thing. Firstly, I'll give a shout out to Andrew Green, my coach and the head of design at Canva, because he inspired a lot of my thinking and a lot of my processes here as I became a coach under his guidance. And I think the walking meeting that you're referring to is kind of like the opportunity that you can take when you've had a bunch of one-on-ones week after week, fortnight after fortnight, and maybe you're feeling like things need a bit of a shake-up. And rather than going through your agenda list or going through your list of goals, it might be a great opportunity to go outside and get some sunshine, get a change of scenery, and that act of changing your environment and that act of walking side by side rather than sitting facing each other completely changes the dynamic, and it changes and influences the course of the conversation. It can become a little bit more casual, a little bit more natural, and can go down new paths, which can be really great for building your relationship with your coachee. So that's the kind of the changing it up. When it comes to the typical format for a one-to-one, I'm really big on keeping a document where you and your coachee are aligned on that one-to-one document. And I really enjoy the structure of having your mission statement at the top, and then underneath that you got long-term goals, which are thinking about measuring success over the course of years. And then under that, you've got short-term goals, which you're thinking about measuring success in months. And then under that are kind of your week-to-week action items, agenda items. And I feel like that's a really great structure and can structure and inform the conversations that you have in one-on-ones and keeps everything aligned. So agenda items and action items are always aligned to the short-term goals. The short-term goals are aligned to long-term goals, and long-term goals should be aligned to your mission and the reason you get up out of bed in the morning and take your whole self to work. And really like that, the way that contributes to personal growth and career growth, and it's all aligned in that way. So I rely on that format a lot.
I hope you have a template for that, because I would love to attach it and share it with the audience if it's possible. And it's so interesting to put this mission and short-term, long-term goals on top of this document and have it visible all the time, rather than just putting it somewhere and referring to it once a year, which is a dramatic shift, I think, in a conversation, in a structure of the meeting. And it would be super useful to share it with the community.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do so.
Wonderful. Thanks, Iain, for such an interesting conversation. You shared so much value, so much interesting insights and frameworks that I'm happy to share with the community. Maybe in the end, I would like to ask you some random questions. You don't have to think a lot about them. This is a lightning round that we usually do with all our guests. And the first one is actually connected to the magical idea and vibe around Canva. I would like to ask you if there is any fun ritual that comes to your mind for team bonding that you recently tried with your team and that anybody else could try.
Yeah, sure thing. We're always trying new things to keep things interesting. I can't take credit for this, by the way. A couple of my team members, Mike Crawford and Paula Toison, were responsible for driving this fun exercise where we dove into a Canva whiteboard and put our avatars, our photos, a couple of our pictures that we use on Slack in the whiteboard. And then everybody took turns in drawing the body and the environment of each of the team members. And then everybody else had to kind of match it up. And it was just really fun. All the funny stuff that people came up with and the creativity that people showed when you just left with this kind of blank slate filling the gaps. And they became kind of these screenshot avatars that were used in subsequent activities as a bit of a reference. It was a lot of fun.
This is fun, and also fun that you're using Canva for that.
Yes, we dog food a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, moving forward, we talked a lot about culture. And is there any favorite book that you'd like to mention about team culture?
I think a book that was quite influential for me that I read called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It really kind of helped me find what my leadership style is, which sounds like a really weird term when you first hear some people talk about leadership style. And I didn't really know what that meant until I kind of saw it and read something that resonated with me. And that idea of kind of sort of empowering others around you, empowering your teammates to be successful and kind of eating last, so to speak, really resonated with me, and I think embodies our approach to coaching, like we were talking about earlier, and my philosophy as a leader as well.
Fantastic. I think like we've covered so many useful practices, and this description of this episode will be full of different links and resources from you. Thanks again for joining us today, and where folks can find you to connect or to stay in touch with your ideas.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to join you today. So thank you so much for having me on today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And if folks want to find me in future, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the best place. I'm pretty terrible at it, and apologies to anyone who's listening and has reached out to me on LinkedIn over the last couple of months. It's been a busy couple of months. I will get back to you at some point, but yes, LinkedIn's the best place. So look me up there. My name is spelled kind of funny. So check the podcast notes to see how to find me.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Iain. And it's been a pleasure. We're looking forward to sharing it with the community.
Thanks so much, Kate. It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you found it valuable, you can support Growth Mates by sharing this episode with your friends and colleagues. Subscribe to our show on your favorite platforms and get all episodes to your inbox by subscribing to katesuma.substack.com. Let's keep growing together.